So we lived in a small town of like 200 people when we lived in Mexico, and we went to the nearest town. I wanted a cheeseburger, and he couldn't even afford to get me a cheeseburger. And then I distinctly remember this. One of the first meals I had when I came to the U.S. was a McDonald's burger.
Can a cheeseburger launch you into entrepreneurship? That's what we're going to be talking today about. And my name is Maverick Lyles.
And I am Toby Lyles.
Yes, my esteemed father.
Yeah, thanks, esteemed father. Hey, we're talking with Uriah, Gracia, Salinas, and Katerra Skinner today of Atlas Physical. This is the Voices on the Wind podcast, which we haven't introduced, and they have a very fun story, as you'll hear. I had no idea. I was surprised by some of the motivations in the background and why they started their business.
Yeah.
So it's very fun to see.
Yes, and then we also have our newsletter, which is also very exciting. We have it's just thoughts on the podcast and just a lot of very fun stories. Some very good ones that have come out recently. But anyway, so if you want to check that out, that's votw.substack.com.
And this is Uriah, Gracia, Salinas, and Katerra Skinner of Atlas Physical.
I would like the podcast. I feel like I need to get their story out, right? So yeah. I feel like that's a big part of my story is their story.
You're going to make me cry.
Yeah, so my parents, right, they're from Mexico. They grew up pretty poor. My dad didn't make it past 6th grade. My mom didn't make it past 9th grade. So they came to the U.S. to give my sister and I a better life. And I feel like that's always been a big thing, was just stability, right? I always wanted stability in my career. And education was a big part of that, right? So, and then specifically healthcare, right? There's always going to be a need for healthcare. So I feel like, and I've always been pretty active as well. So I feel like physical therapy was the perfect point between stability and healthcare and being active, right? I thought about like medical school and stuff as well. And I even thought about that like when I first got out of high school as well. But I was like, these are like little things that I like think about. I'm like, okay, if I'm a surgeon, I'm doing like an 8-hour surgery, right? I can't go to the bathroom. I can't drink my water, right? It's like with physical therapy, like I tell my patients, I'm going to run down to the restroom real quick, right? So those are things that I thought about. I was like, okay, I want something that I can talk to people and be active and move around and not just be sitting at a desk and, feel like stiff after getting up, right? So I feel like that was a big part of why I chose physical therapy. And then when I went to physical therapy school, I thought of like, maybe eventually I could have my own clinic, my own practice, right? But it was never like, I for sure want to do it. But then as I got into PT school, I saw that other people had their own practice that went to my school. So the main one is, his name is Zaki Afzal. He has his own practice. He had 2 practices at the time, and I think he had 2 practices before 30 years old. So I was like, okay, if he can do it, right, I'm hoping I can even do at least one, right? So that I feel like that planted the seed, and he talked to our class as well. And he just told us kind of like, okay, this is kind of how you get into sports physical therapy, how you kind of give us a rough idea of like how you get into owning your own business, right? And I feel like that, just sparked that interest. And even when I was still in school, I took business courses, I took continuing education courses for physical therapy. I really wanted to be the best physical therapist coming out of school because I didn't want to open up my own practice and be like, okay, I'm just learning this stuff for the first time, right? And I want to be ready for my clinicals as well. And then once that happened, right, I took these business courses, kind of had an idea like, okay, this is kind of how you run a business. And again, I feel like I've always had some sort of imposter syndrome, right? Which to an extent, I think it's a good thing because it's always, okay, I'm always going to be striving a little bit more to be better, right?
You said you had the imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. And I know that your parents were an impetus for entrepreneurship, at least I know that much. Yeah. You saved me from all the spoilers ahead of time.
Right.
And you said they weren't highly educated.
Mm.
Can you talk about, if you want?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Are you willing to talk about what it was like growing up?
The cheeseburger.
I feel like, the cheese. I always tell this story. Let's see if So my dad, the main reason, like he told me that the main reason he came was to give us a better life, right? But he tells me this story of so we lived in a small town of like 200 people when we lived in Mexico, and we went to the nearest town, I don't even know for what, right? Probably to get groceries or buy something, but I wanted a cheeseburger, and he couldn't even afford to get me a cheeseburger. And then I distinctly remember this, one of the first meals I had when I came to the U.S. was a McDonald's burger.
Life-changing.
It's a big moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like he remembers that. I don't remember that, but like him telling me the story, right? I'm like, okay, like I can like have this picture in my head, right? But I never grew up thinking like we were poor, right? I knew we didn't have like a whole lot, but I feel like they always did enough to make us feel like we had everything, right? Like my mom would always say like, oh, at least you have like a warm bed to sleep on. She'd compare me to like my friends back home in Mexico. They didn't have a lot, right? Sometimes they didn't even have like heat, right? So whereas here I had heat, I had my own room. It wasn't big. It was like, I don't even know. It fit. It was like, it was a twin size bed. And then there was a desk, and it was right up against. I couldn't even fit a chair, right? I had to like sit at the edge of my desk to do my homework. And then, like my closet, it was one that you opened, but you had to kind of like, it was like this wide, probably like as wide as my feet. I was barely able to fit there. I think I would get, I don't know if the term jealous is the right term to use, but I feel like, oh, I want that, right? But then I always knew I always understood like my parents are doing their best, right? They're trying to give me as much as they can, right?
They're great people.
Yeah.
Katerra, you said you had a master's in healthcare administration, correct? Super necessary. We need organization. We need administration. Mm-hmm. We need good leadership. And you chose to go there. What were your motivations? Why? Why do you care about that? Why didn't you just do something way more fun?
Yeah. So I think what I was telling you earlier is I always knew I wanted to go into healthcare just because my dad was a CRNA. I have a very different story from Uriah. I grew up very, very privileged. My dad is a CRNA. He was retired military. My mom was we were so privileged. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. So I have a completely different background from Uriah, but my dad working in healthcare, I knew I always wanted to do that. I thought I wanted to be a doctor. I would go watch surgeries with him when I was younger because we lived in small towns and they would let children in the operating rooms.
That's crazy.
It is.
So
yeah.
you're seeing like blood and
I've seen C-sections. I've seen cholecystectomies, which is like gallbladder removals. I would just go like watch that with my dad for fun when I was younger. Yeah, so I went into college thinking I was going to get a degree and go to med school. And for some reason, something just clicked where I didn't actually like the medicine of it all. And so I changed my degree to kinesiology.
So you met in kinesiology.
Yep, at the University of Wyoming.
And then you both decide for professional reasons to go to Vegas.
My older sister lived in Vegas. She's military, so they're stationed at Nellis Air Force Base in Vegas. It was a calculated risk to have family to fall back on in that area. We had been dating for 3 months, and I told him I thought that was where I was going to move, and I didn't know, how that would affect the relationship. And he tells me basically like, oh, well, that's crazy because I applied to DPT school in Vegas, Arizona, like Denver. So maybe if I get accepted there, it's just meant to be. Little did I know that night he goes and applies to school in Las Vegas.
So I just applied to the ones where I was like, okay, wherever she's moving, that's where.
Yeah, and that was 3 months into the relationship. And he ended up, the first school he got accepted to was the one in Vegas. So we both made the collective decision to move to Vegas a month and a half later.
Yeah. So you wanted to do coaching, health coaching.
Yes. I was doing that. I was also working front desk at a cardiac rehabilitation facility. And I think doing that along with doing the health coaching, I realized like what I enjoyed was like planning a project or a launch of maybe like a detox event that I would be doing with clients, and the planning of it and creating my website. Like that was fun for me, creating the social media content. I enjoyed that a little bit more than the actual clinical side of it. I had decided to get my master's. I ended up moving and working at a surgeon's office. I was doing administrative work there, and I worked my way up so fast in that company. I would say that all knowledge I have, I'm looking at the cameras for Allison. If you're watching this, she was my manager, and basically I would say probably actually taught me everything I know on the administrative side of running a business, whether it's credentialing clinicians or just the daily operations of like how people should be treated as humans when they're dealing with like healthcare issues and coming in and receiving a service, right? So I think that probably shaped me even more so with my master's. I knew specifically then at SNSS that I was like, we could do this. We could do this and provide this kind of service and this level of service, but in the physical therapy world.
I guess when we came back, right, I started working at another clinic because, again, I was like, okay, I don't know if imposter syndrome, but I was like, okay, I don't know if I can start my own practice. Because I'd had patients like for a whole year in my clinical rotations, right? But it's like now when you're like out in the field doing it on your own, right, it's completely different. And I worked in another place for about 3 months.
The imposter syndrome. So many people are dealing with that.
The best way to overcome imposter syndrome is experience, right? But also having the knowledge of, okay, what am I going to do with this experience, right? So learning from other people, I feel like that's how I overcame it. It might be different for Katerra, though.
Well, we've talked about this before, and I think something that is a part of our personalities that makes us entrepreneurs is that him and I are like unrelentless in pursuing something. And so yes, we have imposter syndrome, but if we do something and it doesn't turn out the way that we want, we continue pursuing it, we continue asking questions, and we do not stop. And so I think we've always had an unwavering faith that we would be successful in this, knowing that it might not look how we wanted when we first started. But for example, we had a credentialing issue with an insurance that took me 6 months to figure out, but I contacted that insurance weekly for 6 months and got it resolved. And I think some people would have given up. And I think that that's just the mindset that we take with everything in life in general. That's just who we are. And maybe we're just pesters. Maybe we're annoying.
I think that could be like also like our backgrounds, right? So like her dad being a CRNA, he had to overcome all these obstacles to get to where he's at, right?
Yeah.
And then like my parents, like, you know, coming from another country, right? They had to overcome all these obstacles.
Both of our parents all of our parents are hardworking people. And I think that is just instilled in us. And so despite having doubts, we don't stop.
And my family, they're pretty religious too, right? So I feel like having that, I always know like, you know, God has a plan, right? There's always a plan.
Yeah. And I think we balance each other out in a lot of ways. Like if there's times I want to give up or I like am over it and I'm done calling the insurances, then you'll either do it or you'll say, no, do it.
So like, and that's the thing, right, too. Like, I feel like without Katerra, I probably would not have started this business, right? Like, I don't think this would have been possible. Because even like during the time, right, when I was working at the other clinic, I told Katerra, I was like, oh, this would be cool just to do this. I was like, you know, not a whole lot of stress, right? I'm like, and then like we'd have like stressors come up, like even when we first started the clinic, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do it, right? And shoot, even like, you know, yeah, it was just like, I was just like, I don't know if I want to do it. I don't know if I can do it, but she'd, you know, push me to.
I didn't give you a choice and you never gave me a choice either.
She's like, well, we don't have a choice. She's like, we already signed the lease for a year. We need to do it for at least a year.
Yeah. Well, and I guess I will say, if we're like jumping out of our like backgrounds a little bit and going into starting the business. So he was working full-time at a physical therapy clinic, and then he stopped and was doing home health physical therapy. I was working full-time in a corporate healthcare company remotely. So I worked from home, and what we would do is at nights, we would go to the public library and we would work in their public settings, and we would just brainstorm what we wanted the business to look like. And we would Google, like, how do you start a business? Like LLC-wise, especially as a healthcare company, like liability-wise, what kind of insurances do we need? What kind of credentials does he need? Do I need credentials to manage it? So we did all of that work. We would go to Blue Raven Brewery on the weekends, and we would bring our laptops and our dog, and we would sit out on their porch, and we would just work on weekends while having full-time jobs, right? And then he was doing home health part-time and really got the business up and running off the ground. He definitely did all the legwork at the beginning, so then I could quit my job and come in full-time.
Okay.
And that's how we're here today.
Okay, so you both have jobs, real jobs. Sure, they both paid very well. You're both successful people. You're well educated. There was a moment that you had to choose, though, to start a business before you even went to the library.
If there was a practice here in Cheyenne that was built kind of like this, I probably would have applied there, right? So I feel like there wasn't. So I was like, okay, there's this gap in the market, right? And I feel like this is what I want to do. And I feel like there's this need for these gym goers, right? The athletes, right?
Active individuals,
Youth
athletes.
I was like, okay, well, if there's nothing there, there's no clinic that's doing that, I'll just start it.
Did you feel the same way, Katerra?
Yeah, I think it was something I always wanted to do. we had many, many conversations about doing it. So I know it was going to happen. I just didn't know when. And I think the motivating factor for me was when you worked at that one clinic and would come home at night and were just discouraged. And no shade or any negative feelings towards that clinic. It's just you didn't feel like you were helping the patients you wanted to the point where it kind of got you depressed, I would say.
I think I cried when I got home from one day with this one patient because he wasn't getting, like, there was certain stuff that I wanted to do with him and I felt limited in that sense. And I was like, okay, I feel like I can provide really good care if only I could do this, like, specific way, right? And I just felt bad for him because he was like a super sweet, nice guy. And, he wanted to get back to boxing, right? And, it's a whole lot of force in one arm in boxing, right? And with 15 pounds, there's only so much you can do, right? And then, I came home and I cried to my mom and Katerra about it. So,
and so I think seeing
I'm
him...
a little emotional, I guess.
So I think seeing him come home and just be so discouraged and genuinely depressed, I said, okay, then let's do it. You've taken these courses, you've taken these mentorships. I literally know how to run a healthcare practice. Like, we definitely have the skills to do it. Let's do it. I'll support you in any way. Quit your jobs. We can live off of my income while you get it started. Because realistically, he had to be the one to get it started. He's the clinician. He would be the one treating patients. It's not like I could do anything that would bring us money, right? So he had to be the one to kind of take the leap. And I told him I would support him in any way he needed to get it started.
You decide to start a business and you're going to, Uriah, quit and you're on your own and you launch and now you're one income family on a job that you don't love, but you're kicking butt in. What are the first problems? I'm guessing, what clients do you get? But apart from all the paperwork and all the stuff you guys figured out at the library.
So we start the business and we do the legal stuff, right? To legally have a business. We find a space. We thought that was going to be pretty hard, which, we went and talked to multiple clinics. Gyms. They told us no, but we find this great place. A great opportunity comes in front of us.
So day one of I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to start my own practice is knocking on the doors of gyms.
Yeah.
Correct?
I went online and I made almost like a portfolio for us that was like, these are our credentials. These are pictures of us. I like planning. I'm a planner.
That's right.
These are our credentials. I made basically a portfolio, a resume for us and would drop them off at gyms with Uriah. And we would get all dressed up and go and say, like, this is who we are. This is what we could offer. Like, this is what we want to bring to the community. Can we do it here? Like, can we collaborate on this? And we got told no.
And I feel like, with those ones, right? Like, I feel like I started a business and clinical mentorship. So I created a Dream 100 list of businesses to go to do that. So then that's what we did as well. Just went to different businesses and be like, hey, can we drop off our information here? Or, can we do workshops or something like that?
Okay.
Right?
Workshops. Yeah.
So then we find the clinic and, I even think just getting, or the clinic, that we find the gym space to create the practice out of. And then the overhead to get what kind of equipment we wanted in here. Whether it was t-shirts for us, like just figuring out how to
There's
look.
a lot at the beginning for you guys because you've got to have all the equipment. You can't just bring people into an empty space. Yeah. Did you have some money saved up? You're working a job.
Not much.
I had some money. I think you were paying off
I was in debt. I probably had $500 to my name.
So I had money saved up, but then when I quit the other job, it's like, okay, that started slowly going down, right? But I was like, okay, this is enough to hold me for 4 months, right? But then with the home health job, right, as well, I was doing that for like 15, 20 hours a week, I think. I could kind of make my own schedule with that one. So that was like good in terms of like, okay, I have this stuff to like fall back on. This will cover, like, I'll be like not in the positives, but not in the negatives, just even, right?
As long as you break
right
it even, you can stay in business.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I did with that one. So,
Okay.
Yeah. So we both kind of contributed to getting the equipment we need, and little by little, like building up the actual clinic space is still a work in progress, but
It is beautiful.
thank you.
Doing a good job.
But yeah, I'd say figuring out the landscape here was probably one of the biggest struggles we had, and just making sure that we were offering something that was needed here and also something that he's passionate about. He's obviously talked about his passion for like movement-based physical therapy and like the sports aspect of it. And so also figuring out like what communities and like patient populations we fit into. Like one of our biggest missions, if you will, as a company is like community facing. And I think that's just because it's how we got our start. I mean, we're from small towns, so it's kind of just who we are. And then working in a community like CrossFit Frontier, where they're all very close knit, you know, we got a couple patients from that workshop, and then they refer some of the other coaches that are here, and then they refer their moms and their cousins and their sisters. And before you know it, we're treating families. And so it feels like what we're offering is like a very like family-based service. And yeah, like we just have that like love, I guess, if you will, for the community-facing aspect of it.
I really enjoyed how so much passion behind their business.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not just he's not just making doing what he's doing because not just because it makes a lot of money. Like, you know, he making it where he comes home at night and he's like, I'm just not happy because I'm not doing, like, I could treat these people better. They could be doing better. You know, like, I don't really think I see that a lot in business. And when you're doing entrepreneurship, I feel like you see that more. But I'm not sure I see anything quite like that. That I really want to make sure that my customers are doing better, and then because of me, you know, or just doing better, and then I don't know how Katerra just also has passion behind the paperwork as well. Yeah, that's still something that's really important for her, and how they both kind of unite their powers together to just to really make a difference in people's lives. I feel like that's just really good. And then to keep as important, it is really about making differences in other people's lives. Entrepreneurship, just in general, I think, in any business. So I felt like they really embodied that really well.
They did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I enjoyed their story and how Uriah was like, yeah, I was going to, I really
there.
like Vegas.
Vegas. I love Vegas.
Yeah, hey, if you have some physical therapy needs, or don't, you should probably go and meet Uriah and Katerra. They got a great little studio set up and do really good work. Yeah. And as you said, they care about what they do. So if you're out of town, well, come on by. It's a great place to be and great physical therapist. So I appreciate what they've built and what they're giving to their city. And maybe I'll go build good things. Until then, my friends, happy sailing.